Joining me now is Senator Tammy Duckworth.
Thanks for having me on.
This is a full circle moment. We talked about a year and a half ago about your Evac bill. Now it's included in the FAA Reauthorization bill. It's bipartisan. It was you serve as the chair of the Senate Commerce's Aviation Safety, Operations, and Innovation Subcommittee. This has now been unveiled, so tell us about the bill.
Well, I'm so pleased. You know, the FAA has to have its authorization reauthorized every few years. And I'm just so pleased that we were able to successfully come to an agreement in a bipartisan way. The bill is really excellent. It does have my Evac Act in it, but it also has a lot of really great improvements in it as well. Money for more training, more pilots, more money for safety systems at our airports, more money to trained aviation maintenance workers, and also to make our airspace safer by more than I think we increased the amount of funding for air traffic controllers by more than 6 times in the grant program. So I'm very pleased that we're going to be able to move this bill here shortly.
So let's talk about the money a little bit more. The bill approves $105 billion in appropriations for the FAA and $738 million in appropriations for the National Transportation Safety Board through 2028. So can you talk a little bit more specifically about where this money's going?
Yes, so the money is going in several places. With the NTSB, obviously, they're the folks who help to write some of the rules governing transportation. So not just air, but rail, road, ships as well. What is really important is that they do a lot of the investigations after accidents so that we get the lessons learned. Really having a strong NTSB that does modeling on what can happen. They're the folks who make recommendations on car seats in cars and the like. So I'm really pleased that we have funded them at above the previous year's level so that they can continue to do their job to keep America's traveling public safe. There is significant investment in the FAA. The FAA had been seeing a shrinking of its workforce for a long time now. For example, we have a shortage of air traffic controllers, and this bill would allow us to go back to 100% maximum hiring of the total number of air traffic controllers we need to actually run our air traffic control system in the Chicagoland area. For example, there are many times on a busy Thursday night, which is a busy flying night, Chicago Center, which governs the Chicago airspace, may need 8 air traffic controllers, but only have 4 on duty. And so this is going to get to that aviation workforce issue. And then it's going to bring down the price for the flying public because it's going to make investments in pilot training so that we have more pilots and airlines can add more flights and bring costs down for the consumer.
And you introduced the Evac Act. We talked about it in December of 2022, but it is included in this legislation. Can you remind us what is in that bill?
Yes. So the Evac Act, EVAC, came out about as a result of me seeing a study done by the FAA a couple years ago that said, you know, Congress had asked FAA to look at how long it takes to evacuate the average passenger aircraft. And they came back a couple years ago and said, yep, we did the test and we were able to evacuate the aircraft in 90 seconds, which is the standard that the FAA set up in the 1960s. And I was like, wow, that's really good. You were able, wow, I can't even imagine that you can, get passengers off the average flight. And then I looked at the conditions that they use, and they basically put 60 people on the entire fuselage, had no carry-on baggage, had no passengers over the age of 60, no passengers under the age of 18, and nobody with a disability or spoke a foreign language. And they were able, under those conditions, able to evacuate the aircraft. Now, we know that that is not the case. In fact, Captain Sullenberger from Miracle on the Hudson said it took him over 3 minutes to evacuate that aircraft after they ditched the aircraft in the Hudson River. We saw from the Japanese, the Japan Airlines incident that just happened a few weeks ago, that it took them 5 minutes, and that was a successful evacuation where they didn't lose any lives. And so my Evac Act basically says the FAA must go back and redo the study on what it takes to evacuate an average aircraft. And in this time, they must include the presence of passengers of different ages, including, like crash test dummy dolls of infants and children. They must simulate a senior citizen. They need to simulate somebody with a disability, whether it's vision or hearing, or somebody who's a wheelchair user like myself, maybe somebody who doesn't speak English. They need to have carry-on baggage. They need to have cell phones plugged in, charging. They need to, simulate the current seat size and spacing on the average airplane today, and then run the test and tell us how long it takes them to evacuate the aircraft. Because this is really important for the flight crew to know and for the emergency responders. Because I don't want a firefighter when an aircraft lands and it's had an emergency and maybe the tires are on fire, to be racing in their firefighting vehicles towards an aircraft and think, oh, 90 seconds, everybody's off the aircraft, because it only takes 90 seconds to evacuate an aircraft. And it affects the priority with which they potentially could be fighting the emergency. And this way they'll know it's only been 90 seconds. It's probably going to take 5 to 10 minutes to get people off. We need to do X, Y, and Z instead to maximize saving of lives.